Today we are going to start a brand new unit. This is just about a week's worth of lessons, assuming weather is nice to us and we're in school every day. I think we're going to be. But we're going to talk about analogies this week. Analogies are important for lots of reasons. You can use analogies in your writing to make things a little more interesting for the reader. But you also need to know how to do analogies that are just outside of the writing first to make sure that you understand what an analogy is. Used to be, there would be lots of analogies on the end of grade test. I think they've pulled away from that just a little bit, but you still will see some, so I need to make sure you know how to do them. I think they're fun. I think they're like puzzles to figure out, and I love puzzles, so anything that makes my brain work and makes me feel like I'm a detective, I'm all for that. So maybe I chose the wrong job. I don't think I'd be a very good detective. Anyway, let's see if you would be a very good detective. Let's talk about analogies. So this is the word you're going to see a lot this week. Analogies. Analogies. Practice it. So I do feel like that this is not something you should be scared of. I think the more we practice them, the easier that you will find that they come to be. They are like word puzzles. We just have to figure out the relationship between some words. I think it will be fun. I hope. So an analogy is a special way to show the relationship between two sets of words. I know that sounds confusing. In an analogy, your second pair of words has to have the same relationship as your first pair of words. I can feel some of you like glazing over. You're done listening. Don't give up. This is just the beginning definition. I'm going to walk you through this. Today, all we're going to focus on is what the relationship is between those words. So we're actually doing the big thinking part, but we're not having to create analogies of our own today. Let's just start by looking at some examples. Okay, so here we have the relationship fork and eat. If it's written this way, you see where it has, I've lost my cursor is disappearing. It has that colon, the two dots like you would see on a digital clock. We call that a colon. The colon between fork and eat, we would read that by saying fork is to eat. And that makes more sense later. Just trust me on this for right now. So you can write it by using that colon, fork is to eat, or you can write it in words and say fork is to eat. I'm lazy enough that I'm going to embrace the colon, and that's how you're going to see it from me because I don't want to write all those extra words. We have to find the relationship between the word fork and the word eat. So if I think about those words, I can say, well, we use a fork to eat. So we might say that the function of a fork is to help us eat. Function or use of something is a common relationship we'll see during analogy week here while we're trying to find relationships. Let's look at another example. Sun is too hot. Okay, sun is too hot. So we have to figure out, remember I can write it with the colon or I could write it with the words, but we have to figure out the relationship between the word sun and the word hot. Well, in the last one we said the purpose of a fork, or we use a fork to eat. We don't use the sun to hot. So this is a different relationship. Let me pause and say this. The words as they're in the order on the screen there, that's how you have to keep them in order when you're finding the relationship. We're going to talk about that more later. How about if we say we can describe the sun as being hot? So sun is too hot. We can describe the sun as being hot. Or I could say a characteristic of the sun is that it is hot. So characteristic or a description is another common relationship we're going to see in analogies. Let's look at another example. We have the words baby cow and calf. So we read this by saying baby cow is to calf. I can write it with the colon, or I can write it in words, baby cow is to calf. We need to find the relationship between the words baby cow and calf. Well, I know that we can define a baby cow as being a calf. A baby cow and a calf are the same things. So we might say that a synonym of baby cow is calf. A definition or a synonym is one common relationship we see in analogies. Let's look at another example. Finger is to hand. Well, a finger doesn't use the hand. A characteristic of a finger isn't that it has a hand. My fingers don't have hands. That would be weird. A finger is not a synonym for a hand. Those are different things, right? So we need to think about, I'm getting ahead of myself, we need to think about the relationship between finger and hand. Well, a finger is part of your whole hand. So part of a whole is another common relationship when we're looking at analogies. I know this feels like a lot. You don't have to remember all of these. You just have to understand what they mean. Let's look at another example. Rose is to flower. I read that by saying rose is to flower. I wrote it using the colon. I could write it using words. We still need to find the relationship between rose and flower. I don't use a rose to flower. A characteristic of a rose is not that it's a flower. Maybe I could define rose as a flower. That might work as a synonym, but there's a better relationship there. A rose is a type of flower, or a rose is a kind of flower. So finding a type or a kind, that's a common relationship in analogies. Another example, ugly and beauty. We read this by saying ugly is to beauty. I can write it with the colon between the two words, or I can write it in words, but regardless, I'm going to say it, ugly is to beauty. We need to find the relationship between ugly and beauty. Well, ugly doesn't use beauty. I don't define ugly as beauty. It's definitely not a synonym. Ugly is not a type of beauty. But I could say if something is ugly, it lacks beauty. Lacks as a word means it doesn't have. So if something is ugly, it doesn't have beauty, or ugly is the opposite of beauty. So saying that something lacks something or is the opposite of something is another common relationship in analogies. So those are your most basic. Now they don't all fall in those categories, but those are the ones we're going to see a lot. So let's try some on our own. Cold is too hot. So something that is cold is the opposite of hot. Something that's cold lacks heat. It lacks hot, right? That's what makes it cold. Wheel is to car. Wheel is to car. So one wheel is part of a whole car. So part of a whole is the relationship there. Bed is to lie. Well, the purpose of a bed is to lie down, right? So we use a bed to lie down. So the function or purpose or use of a bed is to lie on. Grass is too green. Well, I can describe the grass as being green, or I can say one characteristic of grass is that it is green. So there's our relationship between grass and green. What about the words damp and wet? I've been in a rainstorm, I come in and my shoes are damp. Could I also say I've been in a rainstorm, I come inside and my shoes are wet? I can, because damp and wet are words that mean the same thing. So by definition, or as a synonym, that's our relationship. Something that is damp, by definition, is wet. Damp is a synonym of wet. How about banana and fruit? Okay, banana is a kind of fruit. So the relationship here is type or kind. We're going to look at today's assignment where you're going to try some of these on your own. Today's assignment is called Analogies, Finding the Relationships. So you have to type your first and last name. Capital letters are important. It says the questions below show a set of relationships. You need to identify the relationship between each pair of words. So stove is to cooking. Here's what I would do if I were you, and this was my first time trying this. I would put the first word in the first blank and the second word in the second blank for every one of these, and then decide which one is true. So a stove is for, or has the purpose of, cooking. Yeah. A stove is a type of cooking. No. A stove is one part of a whole cooking. No. A stove is a synonym of cooking. No. Stove is the opposite of cooking. No. Stove has the characteristic of cooking. No. So the only one that even works here is the first one. Stove is for cooking, or stove has the purpose of cooking. So I would choose that one. Now, when you go to your page, these may be in a different order, so don't just choose the first one. Read them carefully. Here we have baby cat and kitten. I would do the same thing. Baby cat is for kitten, or baby cat has the purpose of kitten. No. Baby cat is one part of a whole kitten. No. Baby cat is the opposite of kitten. No. Baby cat is a synonym of kitten. Yes. A baby cat is a type of kitten? Maybe, but don't you think this is a better answer? Yeah, I would have a hard time. When I think about types of, I would think a Siamese cat or a Maine Coon cat. That's types of. A baby cat is not a type of kitten. They mean the same thing. They're synonyms. A baby cat has the characteristic of kitten. The only good answer here is that it's a synonym of. Do you understand what I'm doing? This is what you're going to This is what you're going to do. This is what you are going to do for all of these. I believe you have 20 of them today. Let me just make sure we don't have anything new that you need to pay attention to. When you are done, please go back and check over and make sure that as you scrolled, especially if you are I believe it's when you're scrolling on the screen. Sometimes when your finger touches, it thinks you're choosing a new answer. So use your mouse or use your trackpad here on your computer and make sure your chosen answers have remained your chosen answers. When you're positive, all of your answers are what you want them to be, click submit and you're done today. If you have any questions, please email me.